Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us again. Spectrum Voices Conversation is enabled by the entirely autistic charity, Autistic Association. So thank you to Autistic Association for making this happen. AutisticRadio.com is a place where autistic people have their identity expressed in their own words with their own authentic voices. And if that fits you, if you're somebody who has something to express about autism, then you're free to join us here and become part of our team here. We've got all kinds of opportunities to do things with you. I'm very, very fortunate today. Here is the meeting for the Autistic radio team, and I have two people who've come along to that meeting who are fairly new to the Autistic radio group, but already have become really important voices. And I think that's a really lovely thing. So can I just say, Lucy and Raymond, it's really good that you're here with us today. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely seconded. It's good to be here. Thank you for inviting me along.
Yeah, and then we try to make the invite as wide as possible to everybody. The project that we have at the moment, the 444 p.m. easy to remember Sunday drop-in for autistic adults, got going really kind of properly this weekend, didn't it? It was we're the fourth time that we've put this together, and it was really nice. I think it turned out to be a good model of how it could be. Did you guys feel the same?
I think it works when it's unplanned, yeah.
Yeah. It's just saying whatever we wanted to, and I didn't expect those conversations to come up, but I think, they did express autism. They did express us seeing things differently or doing things differently. And there were also practical things in there as well. So I think I feel kind of chuffed with ourselves. I think, sometimes we have to stop and say, this is turning out to be quite a good idea. Yeah. I shouldn't have said quite, should I? I should have said, this is turning out to be a good idea, and we should congratulate ourselves on that.
Yeah, when you think you have nothing, in a sense you have everything. So it's always a good place.
Okay, so that's Ray making her pitch to be our resident Zen master there, I believe. I'm getting used to very pithy philosophical points from Ray that are lovely, because it's like having a puzzle that opens your mind. And I don't get you every time, Ray, but you do. You spend the time to explain yourself. I think that's great.
I don't mean to be Zen, it's just I grew up on the TV show Kung Fu with David Carradine.
So the other thing I've got to report to the group is I went along to be interviewed by Autistic Knowledge Development's late diagnosis forum. They have a closed group for the people that have been through their program, and it's a forum. It's a different kind of forum. It's a different kind of forum to the 444. People can be on there in text. They can be relating to each other and explaining themselves to each other, and it seems like a very lovely thing that they've got going there, and we talked about it with them. I introduced the 444 that we're doing to them, and there's crossover, and there's a nice cooperation going between us and themselves. The facilitator there is going to do a podcast with us. It's Katie Forbes, I believe. Yeah. An autistic person herself, working as a professional over there with Autistic Knowledge Development. So that's a good thing going forward for us. Do we need any more news? Is there any other business that anybody would like to bring up at the meeting? Okay, well, this is the time that we join for Harry's Facebook page. Harry curates Autistic Radio Com at Facebook, and he puts together a nicer world than the general melee of social media. Most of the things that he shares with us have an opportunity to look at autism in a positive way, and some of the things in there are there to challenge us as well. So Harry's away, so I get the opportunity to say, Harry, this Facebook thing you're doing is an integral part of autisticradio.com. I have guests from the Facebook, and people contact us and become part of Autistic Radio because of the Facebook. And every week you host a program when you've curated these different interesting articles, and then open up a conversation for us with things to say yourself, your own blog, and it's a really lovely time spending that hour and a half talking about what you do. And then when you edit it up and you make it into a much shorter version, lots of people listen to it and are looking forward to it coming out each week. So thank you, Harry. Yep. And straight over to what he's left us of enjoying himself. The first one is about autism and driving. And we did speak about this in one of our podcasts a little while ago, and there was a lot of different experience of driving. I've done a lot of driving over the time, but I've done thousands of miles all over Europe and in different countries in different kinds of conditions, and had to adapt all the way. But to get to pass my test was absolutely appalling. I think it took me 4 times to pass my test, maybe 5. My wife stopped making the cakes to congratulate it after a while. So it's a lot of different experience. What do you guys think about this?
I can't drive, and I have tried to learn how to drive, but I've never ever been able to. I found it really scary, to be honest. You know, I felt like it was something I needed to learn. Everybody else can drive, I should drive too. So I kind of pushed myself into having lessons, and I had a lot of lessons. But I guess for me, it just did not come very easily. I got very nervous about it, you know, and I think I failed 3 times. And then after that, I just sort of like told myself that maybe this isn't something you're going to be able to achieve. So I stopped. Um, I've always been a sort of a pedestrian. I just can't do it.
I drive. I was a late driver. It happened in my mid-40s to look after my parents. They helped pay for lessons so as I could take over my dad's car when they were becoming a bit more disabled. So it took me 2 attempts to pass, and initially I found it quite difficult. May have been the way I was being instructed, but it wasn't quite a natural. And I was really surprised I passed the second time, because I knew I made mistakes, but I think the guy was just being favourable towards me, because I was spending a fortune on lessons. So initially I really enjoyed driving. It was a bit of a freedom. But recently I found it quite stressful, and I have a kind of analogy, not an allergy, but an analogy relating to it. which is like
Very
when
droll.
I go. Sorry.
Very droll. Just picking up on a joke there.
Oh, right, the joke, yeah.
Yeah, very
But
droll, I was saying.
last week I found myself making this analogy of entering traffic. You know, when I leave my quiet parked space, I go through a quiet-ish side road, and then I enter into this main road, which is really busy, and the traffic is intense. Half of the city passes through it. So it's like always a shock to the system now. And I kind of see it as a kind of metaphor or an analogy for sometimes the neurodivergent or autistic experience, the sensory overload of participation sometimes, and engagement and interacting with the big wide world. So I don't drive as much as I used to. It's very limited, only for emergencies and absolutely necessary. And that's it just now.
I think the other thing in it is it can be done, but there are so many different things. Everything from the dyspraxia to the overwhelmingness of everything going on all at once around you. There are lots of impediments, I think, if you're autistic, to getting out there and getting past it and getting doing it. But it can be done, and it, it it's tough. It's one of those things we might just have to work a lot harder at if we want to do it, and for a lot of people, it isn't worthwhile.
I worry about a message saying that we're all going to be overwhelmed by it, as that leads to them concluding we're dangerous and stopping allowing us. You know that this was these personal variables to look at how you feel about on a checklist. I think the post is clear about that. It sort of labels autistic people as a whole with
I think there are some countries where there is actually prejudice against autistic people in driving. You know, insurance premiums and that kind of thing.
Yes. Well, this is going to get pounced on by those insurers, and there's not going to roll it back.
Well, no, I think actually the figures show that the kind of people who do a lot of driving who are autistic have very high proficiencies, because they make it their passion, their thing. I know a lot of autistic people who, you know, are lorry drivers. We had a lorry driver talking about his book. You know, I've driven enormous thousands of miles. You know,
but so this women post needs to say that. You know, it needs to be visible at the same time.
Yeah, you know, I didn't want to. I didn't want to directly point at the post and say I don't agree with this. I kind of more wanted to put an alternative view forward.
It is difficult to get that even-handedness sometimes when you're commenting on a subject.
Summer Forelli has posted. Summer is a 17-year-old neurodivergent inclusion advocate, education consultant and public speaker, and a lot of other skills as well. And the post is, I was asked the question on this page a few years ago by a teacher. Do I ever consider others that are around me. I remember I was in grade 5, about 10 years old. I had a social situation to navigate. My classmates would always borrow my stationery. I didn't mind sharing. The issue was that no one returned my stationery. Then I would get in trouble by my teachers for not having the correct stationery needed for the day. I didn't like saying no because that would cause conflict and disharmony between myself and my peers. I didn't like to say no just in case my classmate was having financial hardship or other challenges in their home life. I decided to come up with my solution. Instead of having book club, I asked Mum if I could please buy some school supplies and create a loan box, which meant that my classmates could use the supplies from the loan box from the day and return them in the afternoon. And this allowed me to feel comfortable with saying no to using my stuff. It also relieved the overwhelming guilt I felt when I did say no. It also helped those families who may have not been able to afford school supplies of their own. Sometimes neurodivergent individuals care too much about others. Sometimes it impacts on our own happiness and well-being.
Impressive problem solver. I mean, the sense of fairness that it started with, that she, in case folks are in a genuine problem, not to say no if you're not sure that they're trying it on and you have the possibilities. It's genuine. We're nicer for that, but we can realize that the taking advantage situation is not working and redesign it. Good parent, I suppose, going along with the idea on its merits.
Justin texts about driving. Driving as an autistic. I can't drive either, Lucy. I was too scared to drive when I was younger, I think, and that carried over into my adulthood. I wasn't ready for it. It was too distracting for me, I guess, with a downcast face.
Yeah, I can understand it. It is a scary business, and I'm not. I mean, I lived in London for a long time, so cars were not necessary really. We had transport, but the moment I went behind the wheel, I knew that it was me in charge of this thing, and all that I had to think. You know, I couldn't. I tried manual, couldn't do it. Too much stuff. Went with the automatic, which was better, but at the same time, it felt like a responsibility. I know that sounds strange, but it felt like I was now responsible for this thing that's kind of like going along this road and safety and looking at this. And I just found it really overwhelming. I just felt I couldn't, it was too much for my senses. There was too much to take in. Um, Possibly I could have passed if I kept pushing and pushing, but in the end, I just felt that there was something in me that was kind of holding me back, and I didn't do it. Um, I kind of wish I did. I wish that maybe I'd been that little bit more, a little bolder, or a little bit more, like engaged with it. But I mean, now I just think it's all a bit too late. I probably can't afford it now either. So, no, for me, it was always a no.
I think that it's that feeling of responsibility that autistic people take, which makes them actually safer drivers in lots of cases. It's that we kind of, a lot of people underestimate their abilities to do it and decide not to do it, which means that the people that do decide to carry on doing it are doing it feeling responsible, feeling those things that you're talking about, and taking it seriously. I think less quite steady routine drivers, a lot of autistic people.
My father, who was never diagnosed, but I was absolutely certain he showed a lot of autistic traits. Um, Driving was his thing. I mean, he was a magnificent driver. He drove for a living. He could drive coaches and lorries, and he used to drive prison vans, and and for him, he found that a really freeing space for himself because that was him on his own driving. It was like it was his car, his van, his whatever, and he found that kind of a little bit of a sacred space, and I kind of envy that because he really was out on his own a lot of the time, and that pleased him. um and it's a shame I didn't get that gene, but he was fantastically, he was the best driver. And yeah, so I think for some people it might feel like a really freeing thing to do, a really independent good thing to be able to do, to be able to transport yourself from here to there on your own steam and be able to do it all by yourself. So maybe there's a little of that in there. I don't know.
Justin in text says yes, responsibility, in response to what you were saying. Um, well, I'm autistic. I drive, and I've driven a lot. I was a motorcycle courier for a period of my time. A very, very solitary job. An anonymous person inside a mask, going in and out of offices and driving thousands of miles a year on motorcycles and sometimes in vans. It has been a freeing experience. I remember our first car that we were given because it was going to the scrapyard soon after anyway. And we drove it from Bournemouth to Scotland. It took us 2 days. We had to sleep in it part way. And I remember the adventure of having the freedom of a car and doing a road trip like that when you were, in your early 20s. But it's not for everyone.
I found that the generation, like my father's generation, post-war, with national service and things like that, passed their tests really easily. It was almost a natural thing for them to be involved with vehicles. And I think from a young age you can get a natural inclination or evolve a natural inclination for a skill set. It's no great deal for you. It becomes your thing. But if it's something you haven't done and then in later life feel obliged to or feel some kind of demand or pressure to do it, it can be quite difficult because it just doesn't feel like you. Even though you maybe want to do it and you try really hard to do it, it can be a struggle. And some people just have inclinations in these areas, yeah. I remember the theory test, hazard awareness, and you can see how that might be, a lot of autistic people may respond to that element when you use computers initially and test yourself, the game aspect of it, say.
I'm a crusty old fart. I got my license in the 80s, I think. the first time I had some income in my life. I had been driving cars illegally beforehand, and just up and down the place, just so I knew how they worked. So it wasn't from a total zero. And whilst I was taking my lessons, I drove around illegally a lot to get plenty of practice in. But passing the test was an appalling thing to do. And the test was so damn easy by comparison to what it is now. There was no real theory. There was 3 questions. There was an eye test, reading a number plate, and then there was jump in a car with Johnny and drive around the local town. By comparison to what people do now, it was nothing. And I failed it. Once, twice, 3, 4 times maybe. There's a lovely post here. Autism to Max. And some beautiful pictures on the post of a couple that are quirky, unusual, but they look so happy, and they're actually very lovely pictures that they've managed to take of themselves, possibly into a mirror, including a nice big rose. Now, this is the lady speaking. I've been rather lax in making posts, and I apologise for that. We've had a lot of personal stuff going on in our lives, but today had me on the edge of a complete breakdown. While Bill went to the store, I set about picking up the house, and I made a sandwich. I think that means clearing the house. As I went to go sit down on our couch, the slide out on that wall started sliding in on its own. I think that's a slide out bed. Try as I might, I couldn't get it to stop. As it came in, it was destroying my things that I kept beside me. A small hoard of comfort things. I was crying and falling apart when Bill got back. The slide out is still in now because we can't figure out how to get it fixed yet. It's actually cozy now that I've cleaned up everything. And that was pushed in every direction or broken. We do hope to get a tiny home, so this will be a good practice, I suppose. So anyway, Bill went once again to town, this time to get burgers, and arrived back with a big pink heart rose. I've never received one before. It's beautiful. And the clincher is, I know as hard as life can be for me, Bill has to watch and help me navigate through all of my struggles. I can only imagine how hard it is for him. He's pretty amazing. You know, I love that guy. Still breathing. Heart flower, Max Heart flower. Did my voice break up when I was reading that? That's quite an emotional piece by that person, isn't it?
Yeah, it's quite moving. They're lucky to have each other. It's good stuff.
I'm thinking straight of to imagine the folks who have not got a bill. And I might have to read that.
I'm sorry, Morris. I don't understand.
Every time autistic folks with partners write sort of eulogies celebrating them, how lucky they are, they're rubbing it into all the autistic folks without them.
That's hard.
Yes, and in the sense that I'm thinking of.
Yeah, that is hard, Morris. And you know, you're right to point out that the majority of autistic people do not have a relationship that these guys are celebrating. I do think, though, when somebody has something joyful to share, it can give perspective and hope to the rest of us that things can change and things can be possible. I know how hurtful things can be. You know, I've had big experiences in my life, like the death of a child and my house burning down and all kinds of things. And after those experiences, you kind of avoid dramas with the death of children, and you avoid incendiary programs with lots of fire. But you don't want them to disappear from the world. I want there to be the joy out there in the world, and I just feel that we have to try not, maybe we, however hard it is for us, we have to suck it up that somebody else has got it good and just hope it for them. And it's hurtful to experience it, but we just have to accept it.
Yeah, it's an odd thing to say that there might have to be a trigger warning on positive stories, but sometimes, you know, emotional situations can be triggering for people as much as, say, traumatic reminders. Yeah, it's a difficult one.
The other thing is, I don't think we see these often anyway. You know, relationships are really, really hard. And they're not all roses. You know, I would say the most of the time, however loving my relationship is, and however long term it is, it's a bloody struggle. It's really hard. And my wife would say the same. It's a very tough thing, and it's not all roses. You're right. Not having it, not being in that situation is not great either. You know.
But I think we can be magnanimous. I hate that word, but it's the only one that comes to mind. Sorry, I'm going to be a bit zen again. You know, not having a relationship is, in a sense, a relationship. You may be apart from people, but you still relate to things. And you may enjoy not being in a relationship, or you may want one. And these things are triggering. So when I say magnanimous, I mean like you accept all of that in a general sense of relationship, even if you're not relating to people or in a relationship.
Life is tough, isn't it? And celebrating some joy, not even third hand, through some people that we don't know that exist in Facebook somewhere, but we believe they're genuine. experiencing it through them seems okay to me. Taking some joy in the world because of their very short-term experience between difficult things that they were dealing with.
I mean, the thing that I think is possibly that they've posted this here because it is for them a rare moment where something has happened where they can celebrate it and say, you know, it was terrible, but we got through this. Um, it could be that it's awfully tough for them every other time, you know, every other situation. I mean, I'm married. I have a husband who has to deal with my autism and has to deal with all the bad things that come along from that and the things that are difficult for us to go through together. But you know, when something's great, you do want to just say, yeah, we got through it. It was fantastic. So I don't mind that people share that. And I think maybe for them, this is a chance for them to actually celebrate a moment with other people. And perhaps we should just be happy for them.
Absolutely right to point out that the elephant in the room, the thing that Morris is clear about, and the thing that he's saying is that there is an awful lot of pain out there in people's lives because of relationships that are either not happening, or if they are happening, they're going wrong, and it's tough. And that's really important that that is brought up. I get it. It's not all sweetness and light. So, you know, bravo, Morris. I agree with you, you know, but I just have to, between getting up and getting to bed, I have to find as many positives in that period of time as I can, so that the percentage of time I feel uplifted as opposed to feeling downcast is in my favour. I really work it out in how long during today have I felt good, shit, miserable, scared, worried, and how much have I spent joy and beauty and calm and contentment. And the percentages, I'm always trying to get towards the nice stuff, you know? Diary of an Autism Mum. Mum, advocate, caregiver, a personal blog. You've been through 1,000 things in your life people don't even know about. You've experienced things that have shook you, changed you, broke you, built you, and taught you to be stronger than you ever thought you had the ability to be. And you are who you are for all of it. So the next time someone judges you based on a small part of what they see and how they interrupt that, remember who you are. Remember how much you've overcome, and smile and keep walking, because you don't have a single thing to prove to anyone else. You've already proved so much to yourself, who muddled through storms that people didn't even see because of how you carried yourself. I interpret that as a call out to autistic people to stand tall.
Again, I'll let everyone express their positives, which they should do, and enjoy them. But again, I have to slip in that I'm triggered by something, second person succession, this thing, you are who you are for all of it. That's, I always thought that's a bad sentiment, because, you know, it's try to rationalize something good into bad things, and I am not and don't consent to be who I am for anything that I didn't want to happen to me.
Yeah, I'm glad you point that out, Morris, because I'm completely in agreement with you. I don't like that thing, you are who you are for all of it. I don't like that because it does kind of justify, it justifies abuse on towards the basis of, oh, this will teach you a lesson and do you good, The rest of it is rather good, though, isn't it? I thought it was very well read and beautifully written.
Well, because you're still here and you're still in a life where you can read the post, not banged up somewhere you're a survivor. I
Absolutely
suppose
true.
that's fairly safe correlation.
Absolutely true. Yep, absolutely true. It's an entirely different perspective, isn't it? The Autism Apprentice CIC has a post showing all kinds of cool stuff happening at their youth club. 8 to 13-year-old sessions on Saturdays. The next one, Saturday, the 12th of October. The Autism Apprentice CIC is a community organisation. autismapprentice.co.uk to get involved in that. Rutgers, understanding the complex emotions of autistic adults can help shape better therapy strategies for neurodivergent people, says Rutgers researcher. Blimey. Here we go. This is a post from Autistic and Living the Dream. Page personal blog. PhD student researcher, somebody who we have often here because Harry shares them. Aaron Dalman, the writer, lead investigator of the project of this article, is a neurodivergent person, or is neurodivergent. So I'll try that again. Aaron Dalman, the writer, lead investigator of the project this article refers to, is neurodivergent. By now, you've probably seen this picture flying around, and yes, the wording of the title isn't brilliant, especially before it was amended. But if you actually read this and the article it refers to, it's actually very good, as it shows how practitioners can use this knowledge to make things better for us. I especially like this quote. We spend all this time problemizing autism rather than doing the work to understand what it's like to be autistic. Then there's a gap and a new quote from the piece. The popular idea that autistic people don't have rich emotional lives is simply not true. Quote by Aaron Delman. I know you know this, and I know this. I know the autistic community at large knows this. I know many people, but not all in the autism community know this. But this is big stuff for research. Huge. This is neuronormative people giving a shit about us and getting it right for once. I'll take a poorly worded title with a good body of work any day of the week. I think it's important that we share opinions like that to avoid us slipping into the dogma that sometimes goes around autism politics, and make sure we don't get swept along with some of the views out there. That's wonderful, Lucy. Thanks for everything this evening.
It is some strange wording, that article heading.
So I'm not behind it. I mean, maybe I just bedded into the idea that pretty well the whole world's got complex emotions. Maybe I should think of folks who think they haven't, even if they have them, or think someone else is having them. But and I mean, an article read by serious minds would get that, and therapy. I mean, all parts of the population can have things to have or want therapy for. Depending how things have gone for them. Just reward with recognition the good efforts when they are that. The model of a practitioner is actually thinking it from our point of view.
Is this neuronormative people changing their initial assumptions about autistic people?
Well, the history of autism takes us from locked-in syndrome to Asperger's kids to geniuses and Rain Man, and it over the years, the kind of things that have been written about autism, very recently have been overturned towards this neurodiversity model. And even when we're speaking to the most dyed-in-the-wool profession that you could say of the old way of fixing things, the behaviourists, the ABA people, even they now are talking as much as they can in terms of neurodiversity and child-centered and people putting the person right at the center of things. And you've heard them in the podcast again and again saying this is the thing that we need to be putting in, the Human Rights Act, etc., etc. Do I practically believe that's what's happening out there? No. I don't think that's what's happening. I think our little corner of ABA and behaviourism and PBS here in the UK is not the mind games that ABA might be in some parts of the world. But I still think that it takes a long time for the change to happen. You know, medical changes usually take 17 years to happen, which basically means is the old people have to fuck off and retire, and the new people who've got these ideas have to take over. Note to Harry in the edit, please keep the fuck off and retire.
He's the younger guy.
Yeah, I'm sure you sound fine in the recording, but I couldn't hear what you said there, Morris.
He's the younger guy.
Are you saying Harry's the younger guy?
Yeah.
He's not 13 years younger than me, though, surely.
More than that.
Are you fucking joking? Jesus. Sometimes you forget how old you are. I keep this number in my head and I'm constantly telling myself this number, but it doesn't feel right, you know? Sorry, you're right. Perth Autism Support, and this is right up our alley. Back in the summer programme, the Transitions Engaged service had a fun session working with the Sound Lab, Glasgow. During the session, the young people and the staff created their own podcast all about PAS, Perth Autism Support. This will now be airing live on Radio Buena Vida this Saturday, the 21st of September, between 3 and 4 p.m. And now you can catch up on the website. All shows are uploaded within 48 hours. The young people did a wonderful job, great music choices, great chat, and we loved hearing about what makes PAS special to them. So that's wonderful. That's people getting into the audio experience. That's fantastic.
Yep, they used to hand out technology all over the place, and I think they still are. So it'd be nice to get some of this stuff going too. I was discussing radio this week with someone, and in Edinburgh there's another radio station called Sam's, is it? Which is
Yeah, Sam, yeah.
yeah, right. And I think we were sort of debating the idea of like, what is radio, online radio? What is it for? What's it intending? And I kind of enjoy the idea of like, I'm not that bothered. I just enjoy it being there. But yeah, Sam is principally music. That's the one I encountered. Yeah, I thought it was also pre-recorded stuff, but my mate was saying it had live elements, but I haven't checked it out recently.
Yeah, I think Sam is worth a listen. I do listen in every now and again, and I would love to do some collaboration with them once we're a bit more established, I think. There's a rolling group of autistic people who present programs. Usually it's a music interest program. Sometimes it's something like a diary program. And I had the lady's name in my head, but it's just popped out. But I can hear her voice in my head describing her day and what's been going on. So yeah, Sam Radio, and there's also another autistic radio station which came out of pirate radio. Now I don't know whether everybody on the station is autistic, but I know that the family that have the station are principally. It's almost in like a professional local radio station, though. It's quite a big deal. AJK Radio, or I'll have to check that for the edit, but the people on there, I think, have associations with Radio Caroline, that kind of stuff, and yeah, the old pirate radio stations.
Yeah, I know there's in Edinburgh there are some stations that you wouldn't even know existed unless you, like old school, were twiddling the knob, as it were, like scanning the airwaves. There's the Mosque has a radio station. There was even a Leith-centred station. But I go back to the early days of the internet when, what was it called, 365 radio or something, where you could get your own radio station online. I always thought it was going to become something that, and then, podcasting appeared. So it's curious.
You don't know this yet, but we have an event every Christmas where on the 27th, 28th, 29th, 30th, the bit between Christmas and New Year, we do a live broadcast every day. We call it Radio Days. We play some stuff, and then we talk in between the stuff, and then we have some conversations like this, but every day for those 4 days. So it's like having 4 Sundays in a row. So that's Autistic Radio Days, Ray.
Right. I was going to say you should have a trigger warning there when you mention the words Christmas and New Year. But yeah, a lot of us are pretty bored at that time of year, and it's well, it's not like the old days when everything was closed. But yeah, it's be good to have something like that going on. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's the bit between Christmas and New Year. I can deal with the the meal and that kind of thing, and watching a bit of crap telly, but then that bit between, I don't want to go back to work. I want to do something social, and Autistic Radio Days fills it for me, and people listen in and they listen to the recordings afterwards.
Yeah, I just want to be feasting like the Romans. Well, the Scandinavians.
Kieran Rose, the autistic advocate. The Nurturing Neurodivergence Program, Virtual Conference 2024. For the past few years, I've lost count how many now, I've been honoured to be asked by Jodie Izzett of the Nurture Program to speak at her annual online conference. I thought that she'd be sick of me by now, but no, I was asked back for 2024's conference. And then he goes into detail, talking about what his talk is about, the importance of being an island of safety. It will highlight the importance of you being an island of safety in the life of a young neurodivergent person you support. And there's a talk and watch. So all the links are on there through the nurtureprogram.co.uk. The conference is £99, but there's a discount at the moment. So that's quite a big deal. It's a business autism, but this is one of the neurodivergent people who have made a business of it. So there's a bit of credibility there, even if it is expensive for most people.
Sorry, I'm just looking up the Nurture program to see who these people are.
More myths about autism, originally from olgabogdashina.com. Here shared by Paul Isaacs Consultancy Limited. There is a common misconception that autistic individuals always say exactly what they think or want to say. This belief suggests that if an autistic person uses verbal language, they always communicate their true thoughts or desires. However, this assumption can be frustrating and misleading, particularly for autistic children and adults who experience problems with both receptive and expressive language. This includes those who are echolalic, as well as some who are fluent speakers. Ironic. That's a quote from Olga Bogdashina. What's being added by Paul is this. Even individuals with high-functioning autism who can communicate fluently may struggle to express themselves accurately. They might unintentionally say the opposite of what they mean, or feel lost for words, for example. Something I feel. When asked, what is it you want? My first answer was, I don't know, though I did know, but I couldn't connect or access it. My mind ran amok with stored evasive responses. I wanted to say a pottery wheel, but the stored picture that came to mind first was from a category of things that we couldn't have. Instead of saying pottery wheel, I blurted out cat. When that response was checked, I again wished to say pottery wheel, but the stored picture that came to mind was from a category of things that we already had in our house, and I said ironing board. There was no way that I wanted an ironing board or a cat. I had been preparing a pottery shed for the past weeks, and I was thinking of a pottery wheel, but I was totally unable to express that want without being prompted or triggered to do so. Donna Williams, 1996. And Paul Isaacs describes that. He says, I can relate to this as an autistic child who was functionally non-verbal. My inner world was a confetti of language, stored responses and echolalia. Yes, no answers. Long sentences could mean responses from the other side. The individual who's talking to me potentially loses context, meaning in which both parties are confused by each other's interpreted intentions and applied meaning and so forth. I don't know what I feel about that.
It's a good warning or reminder, whether we already realised it or needed to learn it. Brain processes and producing words can be fallible and inexplicable sometimes, and to everyone, sort of the flawed machine. And as a check on that principle that we always mean every word we say, I've always been strong on telling folks to take that I do mean every word I say. If they wanted to interpret for themselves, I couldn't possibly, and had to really mean something they'd be more comfortable thinking of. It's just rather a trend in my mum's character. Every time anyone said anything sort of way outside the mainstream, she'd try to rationalize it back into the mainstream, and I had to often have clashes over meaning what I say. But shit. There's some words that come from not quite where you meant them to. That was actually in the show. So I had to be brought more aware of the other direction, because I was something that was happened to her. As I say, I've seen the tension when both these things are issues for two different people trying to communicate, but they are both real. And you do have to try to work out and navigate your way through it.
I find that most people aren't necessarily communicating their, what was it they said? True thoughts or desires. Yeah, language is quite playful, and of course there's common threads and that people learn to engage with each other. But yeah, just thought I'd put that in.
I can recognize also when I've given only short answers, because long answers would get into start these communication difficulties happening. I've got to get into tangles with them, even though the short answers are sort of unconversational. Sometimes they were the better coping despite that. More so for the person you're talking to who's not quite of the same view as yourself on the thing you're talking about.
I think sometimes it depends on your best mode of communication. I often ask people if they'd rather I respond with an email or something in writing, because sometimes I feel more comfortable that way.
Good strategy to bring into society our sort of support mode of chat versus talking, and alternative modes of expression, comfort zone around expression.
Unusually, we've got a sharing of a post from the National Autistic Society, the big charity. What's it say? Help make the world a more autism-friendly place. Read our guide to find out how you can adapt your practice and make small adjustments to your workplace that make a big difference to autistic employees. And the top 9 tips for supporting autistic employees. 1. Clarify job expectations explicitly and provide structured on-the-job training. Yeah, that's something you should do for all employees. Ensure hiring teams and managers follow inclusive processes and know in advance how to support autistic candidates. Okay, so have a positive attitude in the first place and let us in, give us the job. 3, offer concise instructions and outline the context for new tasks. If you're not doing that in a business, you're incompetent. Provide a well-structured work environment and regular one-to-ones to establish a routine. Well, I'm missing the word routine there, though routines can be helpful for some people. But if you're not providing a well-structured work environment, you're an amateur. You shouldn't be in your office. You shouldn't be leading any team. 5, give sensitive, clear and direct feedback, especially regarding miscommunications, ways of working and performative reviews. Yeah, don't use this as a way of bullying people and ostracizing them. You need to be both ways. If you're speaking with any employee, but particularly an autistic employee, you need to be willing to have a two-way communication with them. 6, don't forget to give regular praise for what is going well. Jesus, you must be doing that for your staff. Provide robust change management and reassurance in stressful situations. Now that possibly is one of the ones that is a little bit more important for autistic people than others. You know, if you do know that you have neurodivergent people, pay particular attention to how you manage change, because you might lose a very valuable employee by accident, and that would be bad for your business. Foster awareness among colleagues through training and by championing employee stories. I would be very, very careful there. Get somebody from outside your business. Get a neurodivergent firm in. There's so much snake oil out there. 9, consider adapting your physical environment to support sensory sensitivities. If you do that with the canary in the cage using your autistic employees, you will make all of your employees more productive, and you yourself will enjoy the environment better. You know, so that's the top 10 tips. Anybody else got any ideas?
What, like tips for practices?
No, I didn't know how to link it. After going off on a rant on every different one, mate, I didn't know how to invite other people to say if they wanted anything to add, you know?
Yeah,
I'll
this is
tell you, I'll cue you up. Do you want to add anything, anybody?
Freedom of dress is always part of sensory functioning and optimal
yeah, it would be great
environment
if,
ability.
yeah, I think you're right there. Freedom of dress, being able to dress appropriately to the human body rather than the workplace, you know. Get some laxity on what shoes people wear, you know, whether people can wear shorts or not at different times of year, because people have different metabolisms and different sensitivity to heat and cold.
Says something about history if that's the praise and morale boosters about good things is not already a given everywhere. But the whole relationship's nature. Notice that it didn't start out as a altruistic partnership, but as a stick. Like too many things that have to be struggled to make better.
Well, it's nice to see that the Autistic Society got a reasonable post out there and got a thought to this that's, you know, reasonably accurate, isn't it?
There's 54 responses to that post.
Which people will find when they look at the website and link on.
Yeah.
And NeuroWild, somewhere we often find ourselves. They have a picture of different panels. How am I going? Each of the panels tries to describe how things look. I'll read the text. All I can say is, it's been a time. Things are rough. I'll get back to my usual stuff when I can. M. That's sad to hear that, M. I hope things progress through and the resilience of autistic people is seen again, for you to be on the up. We always enjoy the posts from NeuroWild. They explain a lot to us. Awesome training. Understanding challenging behaviour. So let's dismantle this whole thing and ask a few questions using a hypothetical example. Lucy wriggles, taps and vocalises intermittently during story time. This breaks the teacher's flow and distracts their attention. The teacher's storytelling is fractured as a result, and other children can lose their attention. Zoom out. Everyone has been told to sit quietly and sit on mats in a semicircle with the teacher at the front reading from the book. Children are expected to remain still, face the teacher and not have toys or so in their hands. Already we have potential reasons for the behaviour in that sitting in this way may be uncomfortable for Lucy, or this kind of whole body listening may be a struggle for them, making the experience a challenge. We will stop right there. It is a possibility only, but now we are suddenly thinking about Lucy dealing with a possible challenge, not the teacher. These are things that immediately need us to switch to a focus on how and why. How might it be challenging? Why does a story time need to be in this format? Why is quiet listening difficult? How can we make the experience easier for Lucy, and indeed potentially for everyone, and so on? In order to make learning environments suitable for autistic learners, then we need to ask how and why. We need to dismantle what is happening. We can learn to do this by listening to autistic people and our experiences. And then Awesome Training goes on to advertise that they have 2 learning opportunities starting next week online for teachers, SNAs and teaching assistants who want to create inclusive environments where autistic pupils can thrive. Both sessions are delivered by autistic trainers. You'll have to contact them because there isn't a link in here, unless it's in the chat underneath it. So Awesome Training, AUSOME. Autism Support Community. And it's a lovely share, lots of beautiful photographs. I like to share some of my nature photos from time to time. Sometimes they can help others to feel grounded after a panic attack, to relax, and in other cases, those who were feeling desperate. The animal shots are from my garden and the leaves nearby where I live. Have a lovely day and enjoy this beautiful time of year if you can. Nature can be so healing and allow us to recharge. Brian.
I was a bit too slow with the previous one. That there's so many adaptations it can make. Different layers of togetherness or in their own boxness, but different distances back from the reader. And some may want to be in the community space in the middle, and some away doing their own thing. Well, no, double tasking, taking in the story as well. So a slow learning process again. This systems to, it's not always the center. And those best know start out thinking they do. I applaud the continuing effort with the message. Link to the photos. I think the photos could, for some, be a calming thing to look at in the middle of the story dynamics. A bit like having a photos posted on your little corner, if you've got a working corner.
Yeah, or kind of a nice group of pictures on a calendar, or stuff that's stuck up on a fridge, postcards on a fridge. Something nice to look at to just distract and take away from things, or, you know.
That thing about having to sit still, pay attention when you're a child and being read to, it can feel, I'm kind of recalling this, it can feel like a bit of an imposition. It's almost impossible for you to do sometimes. But you have it kind of drilled into you, you know. So to get these alternatives, yeah, but it's who's going to organise it, especially with young kids. Have they got that kind of agency or authority?
I think there are different teachers who can be taught just to change the style a little, and also their own expectations a little, so that they don't feel as though they're, breaking the rules themselves if they don't have everybody completely regimented. It's a technique, it's a skill set to learn, and I'm quite sure it's teachable, that to just make it that little bit more friendly for autistic kids. I'm sure that's true.
Yeah. Is it allowed though in an outcome-driven reality?
Well, it is going on. It is, it's happening. I can't say it's happening enormous amounts, but it's happening. And also, various autistic people are setting up organisations with different degrees of qualification, but also different degrees of experience, because qualifications aren't everything. And it's kind of a wild west, but I would definitely err towards the autistic groups than the previous groups with, psychiatry backgrounds.
Yeah, I was sort of assuming this was schooling, but this is something else, yeah?
But even
No,
if it
this
is
is schooling.
but
You know, they are
making it allowed.
training. You go ahead, Morris.
Making it allowed is the whole. This whole effort and struggle, and part of what the effort of these courses is for.
Yeah, right. The intention of these courses is to reach into places where people are teaching or teaching assistants, or in environments where autistic kids are, you know, being read stories. So yeah, it's an infiltration, but it's also one where some local authorities are willing to fund these things and get those kind of messages in.
Great, that makes sense. I'll read up a bit more on the posters.
I did say it is a bit of a wild west out there, you know. These trainings, all this neurodivergent stuff out there is relatively new, and there's a wide group of people who are giving various trainings. But I have to say that when it all settles down, it's going to be the ones that have the closest relationship to autistic people that are going to be the ones that are most effective, in my opinion.
Anyway, that's lovely photographs of foxes.
You're right. I think we should say bravo to the photographer and thank you for sharing that beauty with us. This is likely to be the last post of this evening, and Harry has left us with a big statement from something called a gratitude app. A generic picture of beautiful sunset, hills, clouds, sheep, hairy coos. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Quoted to, or ascribed to, Marcus Aurelius. So we're talking ancient Rome now, aren't we? Soulfully Neurodivergent says that they've started using this gratitude app to help me develop a more optimistic mindset and felt this was worth sharing. And it's part of autistic self-care, which Pete Warmby talks about in the next post. Allow yourself to do what you need to, not what you can't. To get help when you require it, to find peace where you can, to find fun in things you do, and to try not to care what the world thinks. Which feels to me a very apt 2 posts to leave you with. Thank you to Harry for curating the page here, and thank you to all those wonderful people out there who put the content out there for him to find and put out there for us. Thanks Ray, and thanks Morris, and thanks Lucy, and thanks over there to Justin over on Podbeam in the texting, and all the people who support this part of our programming. Harry's Spectrum Voices Facebook page discussions here 6 p.m. every Sunday without fail. That's usually 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the United States. Good night, everyone.